Satnam, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another episode of our ongoing program. And today, the program is The Roots of Sikh Dharma. And we are in episode 4 of this particular series. If you are tuning in and we're expecting a different program, the Dialogues in Dharma program, that had to be shifted a week later. So we will be doing that next week. So if you were looking forward to that, I apologize. We had some scheduling conflicts. And so next week we will have a wonderful panel discussion with 4 other guests. And that should be very interesting. So I hope you can make that as well. But today we're going to focus on learning about Sikh Dharma and specifically about what Sikhs believe. What is their philosophy? And if you are new to Sikh Dharma, then there'll be a lot of interesting revelations, perhaps. If you are a long-time Sikh or familiar with the teachings of Sikh Dharma, then many of the things that I'm talking about today may be known to you. I want to preface all of this by saying that I'm doing my best to cover what seems to be the main points in this discussion. There may be some that perhaps I could have included and either didn't have time for or didn't find, from my perspective, to be as important as some others. But there also may be some concepts here that perhaps you might explain in a different way. And I apologize if I'm not framing something as well as it could be. But then again, maybe there's something I'm framing that gives you an understanding about it or languaging about it so that you can explain it to perhaps your children or people that you meet who are interested in learning about Sikhi or Sikh Dharma. So I'm hoping you'll have patience where I perhaps don't measure up, and perhaps there'll be something that you learn as well. So so glad that those of you who are here are letting me know that you're here. So if you haven't so far, if you can put a comment, let us know where you're logged in from in the comments, that would be great. Anyway, welcome to Kit and Deep and Judith. And we're going to start now. So I'm going to try to make this interesting. It may not be a roller coaster ride. You won't need a seatbelt, but we'll see what we can do here. So I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint so we can go through these points one at a time. I'm assuming that you can hear me fine. If there's anything that you can't read on the screen, or if there's some question about what I'm saying or presenting on any point, just go ahead and put it in the comments, put a question or a comment there, and hopefully I'll see it while I'm in that point. But if not, I'll come back to it and see if I can clarify. So, so I'm going to bring that up now. So here we are. And as I said, this is the roots of Sikh Dharma, understanding the philosophy, the practices, and the history of Sikhs, and how it can be relevant to you in the 21st century and the Aquarian Age. And as I said, this is part 4. Come on. Why is isn't responding? Hold on. Well, okay. So the first concept that we're going to talk about in terms of what Sikhs believe is this idea of oneness. This is the foundational belief started by, or stated, I should say, by Guru Nanak. And he did this in the first line of the Mool Mantra, which is at the start of Japji Sahib, which is, of course, the very beginning section of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, where he says, Ik Onkar, meaning Ik, one, Ong, the creative coming into being, and Kar, the doing of that. So there is one creative aspect or divine God. Whatever words are relevant for you, you could insert them there. And by doing that, you know, he is declaring a foundational belief that became a seed for many other concepts in Sikh Dharma. As we go forward, we'll be working with those. But this one is a seed that germinates into many other beliefs as well. And you see there on the side of this slide just a written example of the Mool Mantra in Gurmukhi. Okay, the next principle or understanding that we can look at is the concept of Guru, and Guru as a guide. The Guru is many things and can be experienced in many forms or even without form, usually understood to be that which takes you from the darkness to the light. Whether in human form or not, the Guru is an infinite resource of teaching, healing, and guidance that connects our limited self to our infinite self. And the Guru becomes the doorway that opens our understanding to the expanded vision of the path forward, to be the beacon of light, leading our ship to safe harbor. By the grace of the Guru, the door opens, our ears open, and we hear the calling or the call, and we respond to it. So this is a concept that we won't go into very deeply in this presentation, but it's fundamental to the path of Sikhi, understanding that when Sikh Dharma was created, starting with Guru Nanak, there were living gurus. By that I mean human gurus. And Guru Nanak was the first. So we see here depicted on this slide, of course, a picture of Guru Nanak and a picture of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. Kind of the full spectrum of where this concept of Guru began and where it eventually ended up. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So I wanted to touch on this idea of formless Guru because it's a little esoteric, sometimes elusive to understand. Often you may first experience what we may call the Guru in the form of a sudden or fleeting insight or guidance. This can be categorized as the Nirgun or formless Guru. Or this can be said to be the hand of the Guru. You feel as though there is a divine intervention. It can be as mundane as a revealing comment spoken by another person, perhaps even a child, in a casual conversation that changes your understanding of an important aspect of your life. Or it can be a sudden change in the direction of events where you are spared some seemingly unavoidable, unpleasant outcome. So sometimes we become aware of something in the moment that stands out as unexpected, but yet very informational, very helpful in our understanding of that moment or of our life during this particular time. Sometimes these insights arrive like that. And now we're going to talk about what's called the Embodied Guru or Sargon. So this is where the source of divine connection is continuously manifest in someone or something. In this form, the Guru delivers God's truth with clarity and depth, and is the source of continued and inspired regeneration of hope. Hope in ourselves and hope in the world. In this form, the Guru inspires and guides all to their highest destiny. The relationship between the Guru and the Chela, the student, has been highly developed in India over the last couple of thousand years. And that's a tradition that informs how we can understand Guru today. Even if we are not in a relationship or in a physical relationship with a living human Guru, there is much to be learned from stories and principles of how that relationship has existed and how it works. And now I want to talk about Shabbat Guru, which is something that is unique to Sikh Dharma. When Guru Nanak was asked who his Guru was, he said it was the Word, or the Shabbat Guru. Shabbat meaning word, and a simple translation of that is the word which takes us from the darkness to the light. The words and sounds of the Shabbat Guru are consciousness-changing elements that unlock the bounds that your ego holds over your higher self, that keeps you locked in your earth, and thereby freeing your true self to soar in your heavens. When you vibrate the Shabbat Guru, and by that I mean the Gurbani, the words of our Gurus, any of the words that are in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, for instance. Sorry about that. Any of the words that are in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib. Oh God. Sorry, I should have turned off my phone before I did any of that. Sorry. And so the Shabbat Guru overwhelms your inner dialogue. And so that your mind can step into a feeling of shunya, or deep inner stillness. The Shabbat Guru uses the power of nod, which is an entrancing rhythmic pattern of universal sounds. And the movement of your tongue over the pressure points in the upper palate causes actual changes in your blood chemistry. It is the actual reciting of Gurbani, as we say it, especially aloud, the words of the Guru, which brings the formless, the Guru, into form, which gives the Shabbat Guru form, impact, presence that we can experience. So that's the key to understanding Shabbat Guru, is the reciting of these words, and by doing so we experience the presence of Shabbat Guru. Now let's talk about the human Sikh Gurus. Many of us have created meaningful relationships. Those of us who are on the path of Sikhi have created meaningful relationships with one or another, perhaps all, of the 10 Gurus, from Guru Nanak through Guru Gobind Singh, either through their Bani, through reciting their words and reading their words, or through the stories, the heroic stories of their lives. As when a candle is lit by a previous one, the Gurus are said to embody Guru Nanak. each being lit with the same light from Guru Nanak. But they each can also be seen to bring forth or represent different aspects of the teachings of Sikhi, of the Gurus. To many of us, they have become points of personal connection to the Guru, specific archetypes to help guide us to more elevated choices in our lives, how we want to be in our lives. We call on Guru Ram Das, for instance, when we need compassion or a miracle. We call on Guru Gobind Singh when we need the courage to overcome any adversity. And of course, there's a representation with this slide showing the 10 Gurus. And okay. Surinder is asking to remove that banner. Yes, I will do that. Let's see. There we go. That should be better for you. Okay, moving along. And welcome to Surinder and Aman and Jasleen. Great to see you. Gulzan, yes. Wonderful. Okay, moving along here. So now I want to talk about the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. And this line to the left on the slide here is Sab Sikhan ko hukm hai Guru Manyo Granth. This is a line that Sikhs sing every day or every time there is an ardas. And it says, all Sikhs recognize the Sri Guru Granth Sahib as their living Guru. The Sri Guru Granth Sahib is a perfect balance between being nirgun, formless, and sargun, with form. A balance between, I got that. This manifestation of the Guru is the embodiment of all the teachings of the Sikh Gurus and is the embodiment of Guru for all Sikhs. To listen to the Guru's hukam, and we'll get into that a little bit, but hukam meaning the directive from the Guru, is to listen to the language of the soul, like dipping in a deep pool of wisdom, acceptance, and unconditional love. And here's a little bit on the hukam. Sikhs believe that there is a divine will or a divine order that we endeavor to be in alignment with. When we seek guidance, when guidance is sought, Sikhs look to the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, and a randomly selected reading from the Sri Guru Granth Sahib acts as a personal directive for the person seeking guidance. This reading, called a hukam, can be focused on one person around one question, or it can be received by a whole group or a whole congregation around shared issues. And typically at a gurdwara, a temple, every day there would be a hukam that would be taken and often posted. So if you weren't able to be there when the hukam was read aloud in the moment, then you can see it later. And in fact, there are several famous gurdwaras, such as the Harimandir Sahib, the Golden Temple in Amritsar, that posts that daily hukam online. So millions of people from around the world check in on that, and they are inspired and directed in their lives through that mechanism that we call the daily hukam. But a hukam can also be taken at a moment when you're at a crisis or starting some new endeavor in life to help give you guidance. So here's a teaching that is very fundamental to the Sikh way of life, and that is the householder life. Guru Nanak taught his followers that life and life's duties do not need to be avoided in order to pursue a spiritual life. Although within other traditions like Buddhism and Hinduism, the path of a devotee is expected to be a monastic one, celibate, without family. But family and career are encouraged for Sikhs, but with the idea of keeping that in balance with spiritual ideals and goals. And I think that's a wonderful, important value and a principle that guides so many wonderful Sikhs, that they have this idea that they can balance human existence, human experiences of love and giving and sharing with other people. They don't have to be just alone in a monastic kind of path. And yet, they can practice, they can meditate, they can hold in their focus spiritual values. So it's a wonderful benefit from being on a Sikh path. Now let's talk about something a little more esoteric, and that is the idea of reincarnation and the law of karma, because these two things go together very much. Sikhs believe that the soul progresses through a series of incarnations in different forms and lifetimes that existed before this human life we are living currently. Each action generates karma that affects how our soul progresses toward liberation from the cycle of birth and death. The goal is to allow the soul to resolve all karma, to eventually be returned to where it emerged, to be merged in the universal consciousness or God. Sikh Dharma is a path of life above the wheel of karma, above that wheel of life and death, where our thoughts and our actions align with our soul's destiny, where there is action without any negative reaction. The goal is not to withdraw from life so completely that you create no karma, but rather it is to be aware enough to see the karma before you act, so that you can consciously choose to avoid the karma when possible. And possibly to see that karma and understand that that is something that has to be done for the benefit, the best outcome for all. Sometimes we take on karma, knowing that it is karma, but we also know that by doing this, we help others. So this is a little insight into understanding how the law of karma, that every action generates a reaction, and the idea of reincarnation, birth after birth, until our soul evolves to the point where it no longer needs to do that. And in many ways, we can see that even within our lifespan, there has been so much opportunity for us to learn what is taking us to that more elevated state, toward what's called liberation. And so this is a slide that really talks about the idea of liberation. The concept of mukti, or liberation, is recognized within Sikh Dharma to include both the freedom from the cycle of birth and death and the absorption or surrender into a state of merger with the divine. In the world at large, this is often referred to by other words, in other traditions, such as samadhi or nirvana. But in Sikh Dharma, this concept is broadly interpreted to include other concepts, such as shunya, deep inner stillness, and sahaj, deep acceptance or ease with the will of God, with the divine, with the hukum of the command of God. Although it is accepted that the efforts of self-discipline, meditative practice, and selfless service are all very helpful in progressing toward this state of liberation. Above all is the continual devotion and focus on the divine. Sikh Dharma is essentially a bhakti, devotional path. Therefore, it is only through divine grace that one attains the release of mukti. The attaining of this grace is never achieved directly, but instead is a byproduct of one's devotional efforts. There is an understanding that nothing is achieved if you're only looking at a balance sheet. Oh, well, I did this good act today, so then I should benefit from that. I should become more devout because I've done something good. Or I'll do something good today because I did something bad yesterday. That kind of thinking is never embraced as being the way forward in Sikh Dharma. There is a refinement to this idea of liberation. The ideal is to attain this state in this lifetime, Jivan Mukt, rather than to look to one's death as the time of entry into that state. As the effacing of one's ego is one of the primary goals along this path, in Sikh Dharma one should not be so self-absorbed in this pursuit, but rather one should be focused on serving others and serving the divine will. And if, in doing so, liberation is attained, that is a gift or a blessing. This idea that we can manifest heaven in this lifetime, rather than deferring or delaying our embracing of those principles, of those human attributes. We step into it now. We manifest it now. We interact with people from that place. And, it may or may not produce some direct result, but that's almost not the point. The point is to be in that state of being, to be the Buddha, rather than to think that you will attain that later. And how do we do that? Well, through Seva, or selfless service. Selfless service without any thought for reward or personal benefit for others is the highest act that a Sikh can do. At every Gurdwara, Sikh temple, Sikhs will be seen performing various duties, such as cleaning the building and preparing, serving, and cleaning up after free meals, all as Seva. But Sikhs are also encouraged to perform Seva in the community, for anyone in need. Sevadars, those who are doing Seva, are taught to see this work as worship, in that as you serve others, and as they are also embodiments of the divine, then you are actually serving God, him, herself, that manifestation is right there as you serve. It is common to repeat a mantra or sections of Gurbani silently or sometimes aloud as you perform Seva, to help keep yourself focused on the worshipful aspect of Seva. And that photograph on this slide really just captures the spirit that almost every Gurdwara you would go into, you would be able to see this going on. People taking time without any reward to prepare food, to serve it for everyone who comes. And the other thing to know is that this tradition of serving food, especially Guru Ka Langar, happens at Gurdwaras around the world, and it is open to anyone of any faith, of any tradition. No one is turned away if they are coming to sit in the Guru Ka Langar to receive free food. So this brings us to another important aspect of Sikh beliefs, and that goes back to the original one that I started with, the oneness of the divine. And this is equality. The concept of, this concept of equality is intrinsically linked to oneness. Sikhs understand that all people are equal with no separation based on caste, creed, race, gender, nationality, etc. Seeing the same infinite light in everyone, Sikhs greet each person, every person, as being a manifestation of the infinite divine, creator, to be treated with respect and humility. And, you know, as someone who was not born in Sikh Dharma, I was very much attracted to the path of a Sikh, seeing this manifest, this universal acceptance of equality of all. You know, as a non-Sikh coming into Sikhi, I was not treated any differently. I was not seen to be an outsider, but rather welcomed in. And welcomed, not even in, just welcomed, you know. I believe that at the heart of Sikhi is not this feeling that we are Sikhs and they are not, but rather we are Sikhs and we are humans all together. And I think that is a beautiful, beautiful aspect. And we're going to look at some more ways that this manifests. And this this image here is a beautiful image from a series called Ashes and Snow, done by a famous photographer. And humility. There is no more personal expression of this concept of oneness than humility. Within the Sri Granth Sahib, there are numerous statements from our gurus to address the appropriate balance between one's spirit and the ego. It is on this basic challenge that Sikhs are directed to focus their meditation and their attention. Without humility, one cannot progress on the spiritual path. And, you know, it's an ongoing challenge for everybody as they try their best to understand how to balance humility and strength. Humility is not passivity. It's not weakness. Humility is a much deeper connection to understanding that we are all one, and that we each have different strengths, and that's fine. But in humility, from the place of humility, we find we no longer need to exert aggression. We don't need dominance, but we seek mutuality with people around us in our personal relationships, in our work relationships. And this is a lifelong kind of challenge that we each face. But from my own experience, I find that this challenge has informed so much else in my life that it really it enables me to, on a daily basis, remind myself who I am, how I want to manifest in my relationships in the world, based on this idea of humility and strength. Universality, acceptance of all paths, is another belief. Sikhs recognize that all spiritual traditions have value and do not think of the Sikh path as being better or more excellent than others. People of any religion are welcome to attend any of the gurdwaras around the world, or simply receive a meal in the free kitchen Guru Ka Langar. At the ending of every group prayer, or ardas, Sikhs recite the words Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Teri Bani Sarbat Dabala. And what that means is that we are asking for the blessing of all people, not just those who have gathered together for this prayer, not just those people in this building, not just those who are acknowledged to be walking the path of a Sikh, but all people, regardless of their circumstances, their beliefs. We state that we wish the best outcome for all people. And that's an expression of humility as well, starting from the point of oneness. I'm going to check in with the comments just to see if I'm... You know, Kirandeep, I probably could find where that comes from. Subsequent ko hukm hai. I know it's there somewhere. I'll just have to, maybe it'll come to me before the end of the program. Welcome to those of you who have joined our program, and Suzette and Gaja 33. Great to have you with us. Okay, continuing on. So this is now just a fabulous belief. Chardi Kala, ever-rising spirit. And it's rooted in a Sikh's trust in the divine. Sikhs cultivate a revolutionary, eternal optimism. Revolutionary, eternal optimism. This positive spirit is developed through daily practice and mindfulness. Setbacks and challenges are seen only as temporary, as the view is that life is filled with victories and losses, and the goal is to keep going, not to let a defeat stop our efforts to become our most excellent self, to be free of fear, jealousy, and enmity. So this is something that has engaged my spirit for the last 40 plus years. This idea that, we hold on to that trust in the divine. We carry it through our day, each day. It's not a matter of being blind to the realities of life. It's not a matter of not acknowledging that challenge exists, hardship exists, but just embracing the idea that we will just take the next step. We don't need to think about how we're going to overcome the whole battle, but simply just to take the next step allows us to keep going, allows us to reconnect to our inner self, to the divine self, to the Guru, to anything that keeps our spirit strong and alive. And so I am grateful, eternally grateful, that this concept of Chardi Kala has been expressed in Sikh Dharma. I don't find it elsewhere so much. You know, I have a lot of experience training teachers for yoga. And to do that, we go through Patanjali's Eightfold Path, looking at the different teachings that are embodied there. And I always love to tell my students that, all of those things are great. But if you just add Chardi Kala, it just like it sweetens everything, and it lifts everything up to a higher degree. So just letting you know. Now, this is a very fundamental aspect of Sikh belief, and that is courage and bravery. And this is an image that may or may not be of historical accuracy, of a famous Sikh leader, warrior, named Baba Deep Singh. Sikhs never fought for land or financial gain, only resorting to battle when they had to defend themselves or the rights of other disempowered groups. A Sikh is expected to be always in a state of tiyar ba tiyar, which means to be ever ready, to defend righteousness. For those who have taken Amrit, Amritdhari Sikhs, that means always wearing the 5 Ks, which include the kirpan, or the knife, to be used only for defense. It's not there for opening cans of beans or scaring people away. It's only to be used when there is no other recourse. All right, this is another one of those things that I think speaks to the Sikh spirit of courage and bravery. It goes hand in hand with Chardi Kala, that you have the courage to be stepping forward, and that you have the strength to go through whatever challenge you face. Anyway, all right, so as I said when we first started, there are many challenges no, that's not what I mean to say. Sorry. There are many beliefs, many aspects of Sikh philosophy, if you will, that I probably have overlooked here in this discussion. But I feel like I've been able to touch some real fundamentals of understanding what Sikhs believe. And it is my hope that, especially for people who are new to Sikhi, or who are just simply curious, studying it as something that may inform them as they are committed to a different tradition, perhaps, and that's fine. But I feel like understanding some of these principles is so fundamental to understanding what a Sikh is and how Sikhs present themselves in the world, how they themselves experience the world based on all these different beliefs. But in these next few minutes, if any of you have some questions about any of those, or perhaps you are thinking of a different belief or beliefs that I haven't covered in this presentation, please go ahead and put it in the comments. I feel like this discussion is something that Sikhs need to have with each other more often, so that there is a more complete understanding of who we are. Also, as having raised children myself, I know that this is a very important thing to communicate with children. And sometimes we don't say these things aloud. And then the children are left trying to work it out themselves, trying to guess at what these principles of belief are. And I know from personal experience, it's very, very helpful to children when you just go through it without emotion. Just present them that this is what I believe, leaving them the chance to understand it before they're told they have to believe it. And not that they should, at a young age, engage in some deep debate, but rather simply that these things can be presented simply in a way of personal understanding to children, and that they then are given the chance to process that within themselves and their own experiences as they progress toward adulthood, so they can understand these things without fear of taking a wrong step. Gulzan is asking, I'll bring it up here. She's asking, can you share when wearing of turbans was introduced to Sikhs? I am not a historian, so I'm not even going to try to be real knowledgeable in this question, except to say that I believe that the wearing of turbans was not uncommon at the time of Guru Nanak by people who were either of high spiritual status or recognition, or of high social status. And that later, when Guru Gobind Singh declared, he formed the Khalsa and introduced the Amrit ceremony and established the 5 Ks, and one of them being the growing of hair and the tying of the turban as a symbol of the commitment to that path of Khalsa, that was, really sort of locked in, especially for Amritdhari Sikhs. But I have to say that if you look back at how that manifested over history, over the time from Guru Nanak through the time of Guru Gobind Singh and then all the way to today, you'll see that the turban has actually not always been that common. There is a whole group of people that we often refer to today as Nanak Panthis, people who followed the teachings of Guru Nanak, but perhaps didn't embrace the Khalsa form, but still considered themselves to be Sikh. And, that tradition was a lot more prevalent until the 20th century, especially after partition in India, when independence was established. It was unfortunate that it created a very horrifying sequence of events of migrating population from what is now Pakistan into India and India to Pakistan, and it left the violence of that time left a lot of people who might not wear turbans, but had wanted to see themselves as Sikh, them feeling like they were not welcome in the Gurdwaras. And there have been a lot of other things too, but I feel like there's been wonderful movement, I think, also in seeing young people around the world who have been brought up Sikh and perhaps never wore a turban, especially women, who in their young adulthood are deciding that they want to wear a turban to declare for themselves, to the world, that they are Sikh. And or perhaps they really like the way it feels and the way it declares to people around them that they are on a spiritual path. So the wearing of the turban in Sikh Dharma. As I say, it started probably at the time of Guru Nanak, but certainly codified by Guru Gobind Singh in the Khalsa. But nowadays, there's a lot of discussion about whether the turban is the only thing that establishes whether you are Sikh or not. And interestingly, we're going to have a wonderful discussion about Sikh identity next week. And I'll be telling you about that in just a minute, but I want to just take a few more questions. But, so we'll talk about that in more detail next week as well. So Suzette is asking, how do you recommend deepening into the understanding of Sikhism? Well, by study, and by practice where you can. If there is a Gurdwara somewhere near where you live, perhaps, during COVID, it may not be possible to be there or to attend the services, but when or if they are there already, perhaps you can find some way to observe and just participate in whatever way you can, asking questions when you meet people there. But there's a lot of information online, in libraries, so that kind of thing is very good. There, this program and others that we offer through Sikh Dharma International may give you some place to start. There are also other wonderful organizations that are doing some fantastic programming on understanding Sikhi. I'm thinking of Basics of Sikhi, which is based in the UK, and another one called Nanak Nam. Both of those are online video series that offer a great deal of information about understanding Sikhi. All right. Not seeing any questions other than what I've covered. Anybody have last questions before we round up? So let me bring this forward. So the next episode in this series, it won't be next week. I don't even know when it'll be exactly, probably sometime in March if we can, will be about what Sikhs practice or what Sikhs do. And so that's another side to the coin, so to speak, in terms of understanding who Sikhs are, is to look at what do they do in life? What are the ways that they present themselves that we can see? So that's going to be an interesting program. No, I don't want to go there. Okay, so let me get rid of that. And as it says along the bottom of the screen there, next week, as I mentioned, we're going to have a panel discussion. And it's going to be a discussion about shifting views on how Sikhs see themselves in the context of being inside or outside traditional norms of identity. And so clearly, some people on this discussion will probably spend some time talking about turbans. That's next Wednesday at the same time as this program, 3 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. And that's February 3rd, next week. And the guests that I'm going to have, wonderful people. I'm really looking forward to this discussion with them. Dr. Narinjan Kaur, who is a longtime friend of mine, and she's a professor at Loyola Marymount University in California. And then another professor, Dr. Simranjeet Singh. He is also an activist and an author. And he's been doing some great things in this area of Sikh identity. And so looking forward to discussing all of this with him. And then we have Lakpreet Kaur, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Core Life. That's K-A-U-R, corelife.com, if you like. Maybe it's .org. Don't have it in front of me. Anyway, so she brings a lot of insight in this realm as well. Looking forward to having her on the discussion. And then our fourth guest is a young man named Connor Singh Vanderbeek. And he is a PhD candidate at University of Michigan, and an artist, musician, and a writer. And I think he'll have some very interesting insight as well on this topic. So those are our four panelists, and I hope you can attend next week. I think that we're about wrapped up. I'm so happy that we got through all of those different beliefs. And as I say, I apologize if I've left some out that you think are important. And if you want to contact me, perhaps I can include them in a future program. So bear in mind that this discussion of beliefs and practices gets kind of a little hard, because Seva is both a belief and a practice. So we're going to talk about it in the practices too, but it fell into beliefs just because we believe that that is an expression of how to be in life, is to serve others. And so I felt that was very important to include with the beliefs. But as I say, it's also going to be part of practices. And some of the things that I didn't include, perhaps that you thought maybe should be, probably will show up in that program on what Sikhs practice. So I hope that between the two programs, I will have covered everything that is important, at least. Anyway, so I want to thank you all for sticking with this, and please do like this program, share it out to anybody who you think might be interested in this topic. And again, I hope you'll join us next week for what I think will be a really interesting discussion. So in the meantime, I hope you'll stay safe, be healthy, and be blessed. We'll see you next week. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Satnam.